Good day. What I'm going to be doing today is showing you how to use PowerPoint and add animations to your slideshow so that you're better able to attract attention, which hopefully should lead to more interest in your product and should lead to greater sales. So I have my slideshow that you just watched, and again, it's really simple just to sort of prove a point or to point out what I've done. I have the same slide or the same picture, but I've actually darkened it in the second frame that you would have seen there. And then in addition to that, I also have my text, which again is actually two texts, and then I've just copied one on top of the other or added one to the other. So we're going to do that again, and I'm going to show you how. So first thing I'm going to do, obviously, I'm going to add a new slide. I'm going to take my picture and I'm just going to copy it over there. I'm going to go to what's known as the animation pane just to make sure there's no pre-existing animations on there, and we're going to be accessing this later to explain how it works. And so I just have the one picture on there. Great. I'm going to press Control C, Control V. That copies it. And then I'm going to take this second picture, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, go to Format Picture, and it's going to give me the option, hey, it's negative 20%. Do you want to change the brightness of it? And I can change a number of things, but I'm going to focus on the brightness. And just so it's very evident, I wouldn't suggest you normally do this because the whole point in making these changes, you want them to be extremely subtle so that the viewer who is watching your presentation notices that that picture is not static. Something changed, and they're curious enough to sort of pay attention to what you have to say, but it's small enough that they're not really worried about it. They more sort of focus in on what you're talking about. If you have such a drastic change like what I'm going to have here, you're more likely to notice, and then you'll focus more on the change itself than what the person's actually talking about. Earlier, that was a 20% change that I had just shown you with the first slide I had shown you here. I wouldn't even do it that much. I'd do it maybe 10, 15%, maybe less. You want it to be subtle. You want it to be where somebody's not noticing, and all of a sudden their brain tells them, hey, something changed about that static picture. You should pay attention. And then subconsciously they're paying attention without even realizing it, and that's the whole point of this. Anyway, so I'm going to have one picture where it's going to be, yeah, sure, let's leave it at 8%. It doesn't have to be specific on this one. And the other one is going to be negative 63%. I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to arrange that darker picture. I'm going to send it to the back. You have that front picture, and what I want to do is I want to have it where all of a sudden it disappears. So I'm going to add that animation. I'm going to go to animations. I'm going to say, hey, I want to add an animation. And again, when you're adding animations, you want to do it so that it's not noticeable. So usually I find the shape option to be the best, and even this you can go in and you can tweak it because even that's a little bit noticeable, although that's more because I'm using such a huge contrast in terms of brightness. So I'm going to select that, and it's going to do that at some point when I click it. Let's say that you want to do it, you're really precise, you know when exactly it needs to be done, and that if it doesn't do it at that time, if you're forced to click it, then that's going to distract from your presentation. What you can do is you can say, hey, I want to do it with the previous change, or I can do it after the previous change. So for this one, because it's the first one, we're going to do it with the previous, and we're going to give it a delay of 2 seconds. I would strongly recommend before you do a presentation, you practice so you can see, was the delay long enough? Do I want it with previous? Does it work better after previous? So on and so forth. Okay? And so I have this delay. I have it set at 2 seconds. If it's too short, I can make it 3 seconds. If it's not, if it's too long, I can make it 1 second, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it at 2 seconds. And so what that'll do is, and let me just copy my text over here so it has no animations. Let's go into that animation pane and just make sure. Yeah, the text has no animations. Let me just delete it just to make sure. And as you can see, it tells me there's one thing, and that's a picture. and that's what's going to change. One of these pictures are going to exit. You can tell that with the red. So let me copy this in just so we can see what's going to happen, and I'm going to delete this first slide because I don't really need it. So I'm going to press F5, and it's going to wait 2 seconds, and then it's going to have the top picture exit. And that's what I wanted. Great. Okay, so the second thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a second text. Okay, and I'm just going to change the color of this text. Again, usually I would do something subtle so you don't really notice it, but because I'm teaching you how to do this, I'm going to make it the opposite color of green, which on the color wheel is red. So I'm going to do that. I might even add a reflection to this, so I'm going to go to format, I'm going to go to text effects, I'm going to say, hey, yeah, let's get a reflection, because we really want to notice it in this teaching tutorial. Realistically, I don't know if I would necessarily do it. Maybe have a reflection, but not as noticeable as this. Anyways, I digress. Let's sort of watch this. And so what I want to do this time is I'm going to say, hey, I want to add this to the slideshow. So I'm going to have it start in green, and then I'm going to change it to red. And so what I'm going to say to this is, hey, let's go to animation, and I want to add this. And so I go to add animations, or I can just use whatever it gives me here and scroll down, but I prefer this better. And again, I can bring it in with a shape, I can fly it in, but that's too noticeable. I can fade it in. I'm going to choose a shape. And again, if you find it goes too fast or too slow, you can always change the duration. There's a couple other things you can add to it, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to keep this simple. Okay. So what I want to do is after the previous, after I've given it, let's say 2 seconds, it's going to enter. So let's see what happens. Okay. So I have my first slide, and there goes the first picture, and there I've added the second piece of text. Okay, and that's it. Last thing I want to show you is, let's say you want to have a loop to your slideshow. You go to the slideshow ribbon, you press set up slideshow, and you would press loop continuously until escape. Now do realize, I'm going to press cancel on that, but you do have to be careful, and I would strongly advise you, again, do make sure that you practice it, because it depends on which animations you put in, whether it'll actually work or not, whether it'll actually loop or not. So, but anyways, thanks for watching. This is Lincoln Teaches, and hope to see you in my next video. Later.